in the heart of the Wild West, where the land was unforgiving and men were tested by fire and dust. Stories weren't just told, they were lived. Tonight's tale isn't about gold or gunfights alone. It's about something deeper: kindness, courage, and the way one act of compassion can change everything. Our story begins with a rancher, a boy, and a whisper in the wind that would tie their fates together forever. So sit back, saddle up, and let me take you to a time when every sunrise was uncertain, and every choice could mean the difference between despair and hope. This is Don't Pull It Away. The rancher froze in shock, and then acted. Don't pull it away. The words drifted across the fading prairie light, trembling as if they were afraid of being carried off by the wind. Eli Carter froze. He was a rancher, used to the stillness of dusk, used to coyotes calling and the slow creak of wood as the land cooled. But this voice was different. It didn't belong to the prairie, nor to the wind. It belonged to someone hurting. His hand hovered over the saddle horn of his mare, Daisy, the reins twisting in his fingers. Daisy's ears flicked forward, catching the same sound, and she shifted her weight uneasily. Eli turned his head toward the old barn that sat at the edge of the field, half collapsed, weathered by storms and time. He listened. At first, only silence. The kind of silence that presses down on a man's chest and makes him wonder if he imagined it. Then again, fainter, shakier. Please, don't pull it away. The rancher's jaw tightened. He wasn't a man easily shaken. The West didn't allow for soft hearts or unsteady nerves. But something about that voice cut straight through his ribcage. He thought about riding on. He had fences to check, cattle to bring in before dark, supper waiting back at the house. He had a life full of things that mattered. And yet, what his father told him long ago came back clear as a church bell. Son, your worth won't be measured in the heads of cattle you raise or the acres you fence. It'll be measured by the times you stopped when somebody called for help. So Eli slid off Daisy, his boots striking the dirt with a crunch that echoed too loud in the quiet. He tipped his hat back and called out, "Hello? Somebody in there?" No answer at first, just the dry creak of wood and the low sigh of wind slipping through broken slats. Then, closer this time, weak but sharp, Don't pull it away." Eli's pulse kicked hard. Whoever was in there wasn't just whispering. They were pleading. He strode forward, pushing past the tall weeds that had claimed the place, his long coat brushing against the stalks. Every step made his chest tighter. When he reached the barn door, he stopped. It hung crooked on its hinges, swaying like it might fall at the slightest touch. The smell of old hay, dust, and something sharp, like iron, drifted out. He pushed it open, and the sound groaned loud in the quiet dusk. Inside, the shadows stretched deep. His eyes adjusted slowly, picking out the shape of toppled beams and broken boards. And there, beneath one of those beams, was a boy. Couldn't have been more than 12. Dirt smeared across his cheeks, tears cutting clean lines down the grime. His arm was pinned beneath the weight of the wood, and in his tiny hand he clutched a ragged cloth, maybe a handkerchief, maybe the last bit of comfort he had. His eyes, wide and desperate, locked on Eli's. "Don't pull it away," the boy whispered again, voice cracking. "Please, don't." Eli froze. For a heartbeat he didn't understand. What could a boy possibly mean, begging him not to pull something away? Then he saw. The ragged cloth wasn't just cloth. It was wrapped around the paw of a pup, a small dog whimpering softly, trapped under the same beam that held the boy. Eli's chest tightened so hard it hurt. The boy wasn't begging for himself. He was begging for the dog. In that instant, Eli understood the weight of those words. Out here on the frontier, life was harsh, and survival demanded choices that cut deep. But kindness, real kindness, still lived in the heart of a boy who refused to let go of a wounded pup, even while he himself was pinned and hurting. For a long moment, Eli just stood there, his breath ragged, his hat clutched tight in one hand. The boy's eyes pleaded, the pup whimpered. And Eli Carter, hardened rancher of the West, felt something shift inside him. The rancher had stumbled into plenty of unexpected scenes in his life. Stampedes, dust storms, drunken brawls in saloons. But this was different. This was a test of something deeper than strength or grit. It was a test of humanity. And Eli knew he couldn't walk away. He crouched down, his rough voice softening. "Easy, son. I ain't here to take nothing from you. I'm here to help." The boy clutched the pup tighter, his lips trembling. His eyes shimmered with fear but also a fragile spark of trust. Eli reached out slowly, steady as if gentling a spooked colt, and rested his hand on the beam. It was heavy, too heavy for a boy, too heavy for the pup. But Eli wasn't just any man. He was a rancher, built on labor and long days, on lifting hay bales and hauling fence posts. His muscles had carried weight before, but more than that, his heart carried the weight of his father's words, pressing him forward. He braced his boots in the dirt, grit grinding under his heels, and said quietly, "Hold on tight to that pup, son. I'm going to get you both free." The boy's lip quivered, but he nodded. For the first time, hope flickered across his face. Eli drew a deep breath, then wrapped both hands around the beam. His arms strained, tendons burning, the wood groaning as he pulled upward. Dust rained down, stinging his eyes, but he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. Not when two lives, one small boy, one smaller pup, hung on his strength. And as the beam began to lift, as light cracked into the dark corner of that broken barn, Eli Carter realized something. This moment, more than all the cattle he'd raised, more than all the fences he'd mended, might be the one that defined him. This was the measure of a man. The beam shifted with a screech of dry wood, rising inch by inch under Eli's grip. His arms shook, but he held steady, teeth clenched as he forced the weight upward. "Pull your arm free, son," he barked. The boy hesitated, then tugged hard. His arm scraped against the splintered wood, skin tearing, but he pulled it out with a cry. The pup whimpered, twisting in the ragged cloth, but the boy held on tight. "That's it, now move." Eli strained, holding the beam just high enough for the boy to scurry backward on his knees. When the boy was clear, Eli let the timber crash back to the ground. The barn shook, a plume of dust exploding upward. Eli staggered, chest heaving, his shirt clinging with sweat. He swiped his sleeve across his brow, then looked down at the boy. The child clutched the pup close to his chest, tears streaking his dusty face. But his eyes, those eyes, burned with relief and something fiercer, gratitude. "Thank you, mister," the boy whispered, his voice hoarse. You saved us." Eli crouched down, softening his voice. "You're safe now." "What's your name, son?" the boy sniffled, stroking the pup's trembling fur. "Tommy. This here's Scout." Eli's gaze drifted to the pup, a scrappy little thing with one ear flopped down, ribs showing through its thin coat. Weak but still alive. The cloth around its paw was soaked with blood. Eli felt a knot tighten in his chest. "You did good, Tommy," Eli said quietly. "Most men wouldn't have held on like you did." The boy's lip trembled. I thought if I let go, he'd die." "I couldn't let him go, mister. He's all I got." Those words landed heavy. Out here in the West, a boy might not have much. Maybe a broken barn, maybe no family, maybe nothing but a pup and hope. Eli recognized that kind of emptiness. He'd felt it too, years ago, when his father passed, leaving him with a ranch too big and nights too long. Eli reached into his coat, pulled out a small flask and pressed it into the boy's hands. "Take a sip. Slow." Tommy obeyed, coughing a little as the water slid down his throat. His small shoulders shook, the adrenaline wearing off, the weight of fear and exhaustion finally settling. Scout whined softly, licking his hand. Eli stood, scanning the barn. It wasn't just collapsed from age, it looked burned, blackened beams charred on one side. Someone had torched it. His stomach sank. "Tommy," he said carefully, "where's your folks?" The boy's eyes dropped to the dirt. Silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Gone. House caught fire last winter. Mama didn't make it. Pa never came back after." The words punched harder than any outlaw's fist. Eli swallowed, his throat rough. He glanced at the blackened barn beams again. A boy and a pup, left alone in the ashes. No wonder Tommy clung so hard. "You been out here by yourself since then?" Eli asked. Tommy nodded. "Scout too. I fix what I can, hunt when I can. Sometimes I sleep in the barn, but sometimes men come." Eli stiffened. "Men?" Tommy's voice shook. "Bad ones. They took what was left of Pa's things, said they'd be back. Today I hid. Barn roof gave way. Then I couldn't move." Rage flared hot in Eli's gut. Outlaws preying on a child. It was the kind of ugliness that poisoned the frontier. He wanted to saddle Daisy and ride straight for the nearest sheriff. But he looked at Tommy again. Scrawny, trembling, clutching his pup like life itself, and Eli knew he couldn't just hand this boy off to someone else. Not tonight. He crouched low, meeting Tommy's eyes. "You ain't alone anymore, you hear me? You come with me. My ranch is a ways out. You'll have food, a bed, and Scout'll get his paw fixed up proper." Tommy blinked, hope flickering through his fear. You'd take us? Eli's voice was firm. No boy ought to face this world alone. And no pup either. For the first time, a smile ghosted across Tommy's face. Small, fragile, but real. He buried his face in Scout's fur, and Eli felt his own throat tighten. They left the barn together. The sky had deepened into purple, stars pricking the horizon. Eli lifted Tommy onto Daisy's saddle, the boy hugging Scout close. Eli walked beside them, one hand on the reins, the other steadying the boy. As they crossed the prairie, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was filled with something else, something lighter, the sound of a boy breathing steady, the quiet whimper of a pup, and the steady rhythm of Daisy's hooves, carrying them away from the wreckage and into something new. That night, when Eli laid out a blanket for Tommy in the ranch house and set Scout by the fire, he caught himself pausing, watching. The boy, curled up with his pup, eyes finally closed in sleep. For the first time in who knows how long, Tommy looked safe, and Eli realized maybe this wasn't just about saving a boy and a dog. Maybe it was about saving himself too, because in their need, in their raw, stubborn hope, they'd given him something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. The West was a hard place. But tonight Eli Carter believed in something softer too. Something stronger: humanity. And that, he thought as he pulled the blanket tighter around the boy, was worth holding on to. The rooster crowed just as dawn painted streaks of gold across the wide Texas sky. Eli Carter was already awake, leaning against the porch post, sipping coffee from a battered tin cup. His eyes drifted toward the small figure curled on the cot by the fire inside. Tommy, his arm wrapped tight around the pup, Scout. Eli let out a slow breath. He wasn't used to having company at the ranch, not since his father passed. The quiet had been his only companion for years. But last night, hearing the boys breathing steady into sleep, Eli had felt something he hadn't felt in a long while: peace. Still, the weight of Tommy's story lingered. Outlaws, fire, a boy left to fend for himself. Eli had seen hardship before, but it burned him raw to think of men taking advantage of a child. His jaw clenched as he set his cup down. Inside, Scout stirred first, licking Tommy's cheek until the boy squinted awake. His eyes blinked wide, darting around the unfamiliar room before landing on Eli at the door. "Morning," Eli said, voice gruff but gentle. Tommy sat up slowly, clutching Scout. "Morning, sir." Eli nodded toward the table where bread and a pot of beans sat. "Eat up. You'll need strength, both of you." Tommy hesitated only a moment before hunger took over. He sat at the table, breaking bread into small pieces to share with Scout before taking bites himself. Eli watched quietly. Even in hunger, the boy gave before he took. That kind of heart was rare. When breakfast was done, Eli pulled his chair close. "Tommy, we need to talk. Those men who came by your barn, if they're prowling around, they'll be back, and I can't just sit by." Fear clouded Tommy's eyes. "They'll find me, won't they?" Eli rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Not if I've got anything to say about it." Tommy swallowed, then whispered, "Why are you helping me, mister? You don't even know me." The question hit Eli harder than he expected. He leaned back, gaze drifting toward the hills beyond the ranch. "Because once upon a time I was you, scared, alone, wondering if anybody gave a damn whether I made it to the next sunrise. My pa did. And now I reckon it's my turn." Tommy studied him, then lowered his gaze, stroking Scout's head. For the first time since Eli met him, the boy's shoulders eased just a little. That afternoon, Eli hitched up the wagon. He decided to ride into town. Supplies were running low, and he wanted word to reach the sheriff about the outlaws sniffing around. Tommy rode beside him, Scout curled in his lap. The town of Dry Creek wasn't much. One dusty street lined with a saloon, a general store, a blacksmith, and the sheriff's office. But for Tommy, it was like stepping into another world. His eyes widened at the bustle of wagons, the clang of a hammer on iron, the voices drifting from the saloon. "Stay close," Eli murmured. They tied off the wagon outside the general store. Eli gathered flour, beans, coffee, and a length of bandage for Scout's paw. As he paid, the storekeeper, a wiry man named Grady, leaned over the counter. "Say, Eli." "Who's the boy?" "Name's Tommy," Eli said simply. "Staying with me for a spell." Grady's eyes narrowed, but he didn't pry further. Out here, folks respected a man's privacy. But as Eli and Tommy stepped out onto the street, trouble came walking their way. 3 men, rough-looking, dust-covered, with the hard eyes of men who'd lived too long outside the law. Eli knew the type, He knew it before their leader smirked and said, "Well, well, if it ain't Carter. And looky here, picked yourself up astray, huh?" Tommy froze, Scout whimpering in his arms, his face drained of color. Eli felt the boy shrink behind him. Eli squared his shoulders. "Keep walking, Mason." The outlaw tilted his hat back, grin widening. "Easy there, rancher. We just come to say hello to the boy. Ain't that right, Tommy?" Tommy's voice was a whisper. "They're the ones." Eli's hand brushed the butt of his revolver. He hadn't drawn yet, but the weight of it sent a clear message. "You heard the boy. You'll keep your distance." Mason chuckled, but his eyes were cold. "This ain't over, Carter. That boy's worth more than you know, and we aim to collect." With that, he spat in the dust and motioned for his men. They swaggered off toward the saloon, laughter trailing behind them. Eli exhaled slowly, then crouched to meet Tommy's wide, fearful eyes. "Listen to me, son. They won't lay a hand on you. Not while I'm standing." But inside, Eli's gut churned. These weren't just common thieves. They knew Tommy, knew something about him, something Eli didn't yet understand. As they loaded supplies and headed back toward the ranch, Eli kept glancing at the boy. Tommy stared down at Scout, holding him tight, silent and pale. Eli finally said, "Tommy, what did Mason mean? Worth more than I know?" The boy hesitated, then whispered, "I didn't tell you everything, mister." His voice cracked. "They ain't just after me. They're after what my pa left behind." Eli's grip tightened on the reins. The West was full of secrets, but this one had teeth. And now, he realized, both their lives had changed forever. That night, the prairie lay quiet under a blanket of stars. Eli Carter sat at the kitchen table, the lamplight flickering against the lines of worry etched across his face. Tommy was asleep in the loft. Scout curled against him, but Eli couldn't rest. Mason's words gnawed at him. "That boy's worth more than you know, and we aim to collect." He drummed his fingers against the wood, thinking of what Tommy had whispered. "They're after what my pa left behind." There was no mistaking the fear in the boy's voice, and no mistaking the danger closing in on them. Eli rose, checked his rifle, and set it against the door. Outlaws weren't strangers to him. He'd dealt with rustlers and drifters plenty of times, but this was different. This wasn't about cattle or coin. This was about a boy who had already lost everything, and the one thing he still held on to, hope. The sound of creaking floorboards interrupted his thoughts. Tommy appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes. Scout padded beside him, tail wagging sleepily. "You should be restin', son," Eli said softly. Tommy shook his head. "Couldn't sleep. I keep thinking they'll come." Eli stood, placing a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "They might, but if they do, they'll find me waitin'." The boy looked up at him, eyes wide. "You really mean that?" "I do." For the first time, Tommy smiled without hesitation. It was small, but it reached his eyes. "My pa used to say a man's word was his bond. I think he'd have liked you." Eli's chest tightened. He gave the boy's shoulder a squeeze. "Get some rest, Tommy. Tomorrow you'll tell me the whole truth about what your pa left behind. We'll figure it out together." But tomorrow came faster than expected. Just before dawn, Daisy let out a nervous whinny in the corral. Eli jolted awake, rifle already in hand. He slipped to the window and peered out. Shadows moved across the yard, 3 figures, lantern light glinting off metal. Mason and his men. Eli's heart pounded. He turned to Tommy, who had woken at the sound upstairs. "Boy, hide in the loft. Take Scout. Don't come down no matter what." Tommy's lip quivered, but he nodded. "Be careful, mister." Eli gave him a firm nod, then stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. "That's far enough, Mason." The outlaw leader grinned in the lantern light. "Well now, I figured you'd be waitin'. Saves us the trouble. You won't find what you're after here," Eli growled. Mason chuckled. "You think the kid didn't tell us? His pa hid something valuable. Land deeds, gold maybe, whatever it is, it's ours." Eli steadied his rifle. "You'll leave now or you'll be leaving in the dirt." The standoff stretched, the only sound the creak of the barn and Daisy's restless stamping. Then Mason drew, fast, too fast. But Eli was faster. The rifle cracked, shattering the silence, and Mason's hat flew clean off his head as the bullet whistled past. The outlaw froze, eyes wide. Eli hadn't missed. He'd warned. "Next one don't miss," Eli said coldly. For a moment Mason weighed his odds, but the hard steel in Eli's gaze left no doubt. With a snarl, he spat in the dust. "This ain't finished, Carter." He turned, motioning his men away. Their shadows melted into the prairie, swallowed by the dawn. Eli lowered his rifle slowly, every muscle taut. When the yard was empty, he exhaled, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. Inside, Tommy scrambled down from the loft, scouted his heels. His eyes were wide, his small chest rising and falling fast. "You scared them off?" Eli knelt, setting the rifle aside. "For now. But they'll be back. And if they're right, if your pa left something behind, we need to find it before they do." Tommy bit his lip, then nodded. "I know where it is." He led Eli back to the charred ruins of the old barn. Beneath a loose floorboard, hidden deep in the dirt, Tommy uncovered a small metal box. His hands trembled as he lifted it out. Inside lay a bundle of papers, his father's deeds to acres of land rich with grazing, and a letter. Eli read it aloud by the light of dawn. "To my son Tommy, this land is yours. Guard it well, for it is more than soil. It is freedom, and freedom is worth any price." Tommy's eyes welled with tears. "I didn't know if it was real, but now I do." Eli placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your pa was a wise man, and he was right. This land, it's your future, and I'll help you protect it." Tommy looked up, voice trembling. "Why? Why do you care so much?" Eli smiled faintly, though his throat ached. "Because out here, son, we either stand for each other or we fall alone, and I've done enough falling for one lifetime." The boy flung his arms around him, Scout barking at their feet. Eli stiffened at first, unaccustomed to such gestures, then slowly, carefully, wrapped his arms around them both. The prairie sun rose higher, bathing the ranch in gold. For the first time in years, Eli Carter felt hope bloom, not just for himself, but for the boy and his pup, for the land, for the future. And as he looked across the wide horizon, he whispered words he hadn't spoken in a long time. "Don't worry, son. We'll be all right." Because kindness, selfless, stubborn kindness, had turned a lonely rancher's life into something greater, a bond, a family, a promise. And in the heart of the Wild West, that was the truest treasure of all.